Hey historians! Again, we find ourselves back on the European side of the Atlantic Ocean. From absolutism to enlightenment to revolution in the US, France, and Latin America, we've had quite a journey. In this unit, we'll look into how these events affected cultural identity, specifically nationalism. Our guiding questions are: what is nationalism, and what led to its popularity during the 19th century? What political ideologies emerged following the Congress of Vienna? How did nationalist movements impact Greece, Austria, France, and Russia? And our big picture question: how does a shared national identity impact values and actions? Let's get to it! What comes to your mind when you hear the word nation? Let's pause to respond. Perhaps you think of your country. If you're an American, you'll hear this word in the Pledge of Allegiance. Maybe if you're in Canada or Australia, you may know that the term First Nations refers to Indigenous people. A nation is a group of people who share a common cultural identity. A nation is not the same as a state or country, terms that are synonymous and refer to a political institution that governs itself. A single state can contain multiple nations. On the other hand, a nation may be stateless. This is when a significant group of people with a common cultural identity does not have its own self-governed state. In this case, some within the nation may feel that it should self-govern its majority region based on common interests shared among its people. For example, Kurdistan is a region that spans parts of 4 recognized countries and contains over 30 million Kurds, an ethnic group that has not been granted an independent state. When a national group does gain independence, it becomes a nation-state. A sovereign state with its own independent government whose citizens are relatively homogeneous in factors such as language or common descent. Now let's introduce another term to you here: nationalism. Nationalism is the idea that one's greatest loyalty should not be to a king or an empire, but to a nation. Nationalism, when applied to an extreme degree, seeks to promote national interests even to the exclusion or detriment of other people and nations. The old order of national identity was based on loyalty to a hereditary ruler. Imagine you're a peasant living in Perpignan, a city in Catalonia, part of the Spanish Empire, a full week's journey from Paris. One day in 1659, France absorbs your region and all of a sudden you're devoted to French King Louis XIV. You kind of have no choice. And then came the Enlightenment, revolutions. National identity was no longer based on this old order of blindly following a guy with a fancy wig, but instead on a shared cultural heritage. Now imagine you're living in Hanover in 1840. Hanover is part of the German Confederation. Just like most in your area, you speak German, you're a Protestant, and you also share cultural nuances. You like opera music and eat Schlattplatte, for instance. But Hanover is not independent. The German Confederation is largely controlled by Austria. Yep. Catholics, who speak a different version of German than you do and eat Wiener Schnitzel. Who would ever? In the past, you'd have to just accept these facts. But a new age has dawned. You no longer have to bow to the will of schnitzel eaters. With enough support from those with whom you share a similar identity, you may be able to govern yourselves. What is nationalism, and what led to its popularity during the 19th century? While the Congress of Vienna stabilized Europe internationally, internal revolutionary movements were starting to percolate within countries, a result of three distinct political ideologies. The conservative ideology was typically supported by wealthy property owners and nobility who believed that traditional monarchies should be protected. The liberal ideology was supported by middle-class business owners and merchants who believed power should be given to elected parliaments, but only landowners and the educated should be allowed to vote. The radical ideology was also supported by some middle class as well as working class people, and promoted the application of democracy to all people. Another ingredient in the revolution recipe was nationalism, which was supported by many liberals and radicals. In the wake of Napoleon, only France, England, and Spain could be considered nation-states. But in the 19th century, liberal middle classes across Europe began to push for constitutional government and the formation of nation-states. Nationalism was a threat to conservative power. Why? In years past, a monarch would traditionally serve as the unquestioned ruler over a piece of land that was determined by the militaristic strength and ambition of the monarch. Nationalism, on the other hand, held that it was okay for an enclave of a particular nationality to rise up and self-rule. What political ideologies emerged following the Congress of Vienna? The Ottomans maintained a vast empire through northern Africa, Western Asia, and southeastern Europe for centuries. They controlled most of the Balkans, including present-day Greece. So, let's put Greece through the handy-dandy nationometer. What is a nationometer? It tells you whether a group of people qualifies as a nation, duh. Here goes. Greece has a language that has existed for over 3 millennia. Check. Greece's history includes its heritage as the birthplace of democracy, Western philosophy, and the Olympic Games. Check, check. It shares a culture of unique storytelling, art, music, and dance, and many Greeks are Orthodox Christian. Check, check, check. Do we need to go any further? Yeah, the nationometer says this one's pretty obvious. Greece is a nation. And yet, in 1820, they were being ruled by Turks from Constantinople, who spoke a different language, had their own traditions, and were Muslim. In 1821, the Greeks said no more and demanded independence. Standing up to the massive Ottoman Empire, however, would require some support. Educated Europeans and Americans respected ancient Greek culture. Russians and Greeks felt a common bond through their adherence to Orthodox Christianity. Eventually, this led to the British, French, and Russians joining to aid Greece militarily in its independence movement, which proved successful by 1830. After Belgium followed Greece into self-rule, conservatism regained the upper hand through the 1830s, with nationalist movements in Italy and Poland failing. But then came 1848, a year of ethnic uprisings across the continent. Austrian liberals pushed Clemens von Metternich, the conservative orchestrator of the Congress of Vienna, out of office. Hungary and Bohemia demanded independence from Austria. Conservatives rebounded to stabilize Austria once again. Now, tell me if you've heard this one before. French radicals overturn the monarchy, political factions emerge, a new constitution is drafted, and a guy named Napoleon takes over. There's a reason why the French have the saying déjà vu, am I right? No, this is not 1789. This is 1848. French radicals emerged to overthrow the monarchy and establish a republic. However, the movement split over differing goals. Eventually, a moderate constitution was drafted, and Napoleon's nephew, Louis Napoleon, took control and became Emperor Napoleon III. He reformed the nation, leading France into a prosperous age of industrialization, but without turning Europe and the world into his personal game of civilization, like his uncle had done. Russia's never-ending quest to enlarge itself continued in the 1850s, when Tsar Nicholas II attempted to take Ottoman lands. Russia was eventually embarrassed in the Crimean War in 1856, losing due to its poor industry and infrastructure. The medieval order of feudalism was finally abolished. What does nationalism have to do with Russia, an already sovereign nation? In this case, national pride pushed Russia to modernize the economy and industry in order to raise its status on the world stage. Let's review. How did nationalist movements impact Greece, Austria, France, and Russia? The world had gone through many changes. Nationalism became a cultural reaction to these changes. The Enlightenment ideals of personal freedom and democracy were all about the value of the individual and the collective good. These were being made manifest in a prioritization of common cultural values over loyalty to an old order monarch. People who shared cultural values often shared goals, whether political, social, or economic, and these goals were within the reach of national groups that worked collectively. So, that leads us to our big picture question. How does a shared national identity impact values and actions? After the video, answer in your PDF. Historians were just getting started with this showdown. In one corner, we have the reigning heavyweight champion of Europe, the Empire System. And in the other corner, we have the scrawny but scrappy underdog, Nationalism. Get ready, because this match will go all 15 rounds. Who comes out on top? You'll learn more next time, because history is everywhere.